author DL Tillery here, the Mistress of Horror. Welcome back to my channel. Before we get started, bet you press that subscribe button and ring that bell so you know when I'm uploading new videos. Welcome to another book review. This one is for How to Write a Non-Fiction Book in 24 Hours by Dale L. Roberts. Let's jump into my thoughts and review for this book. Now, I wrote a very detailed review for this book as well. It tends to be my MO nowadays for my book reviews for the most part, especially nonfiction ones that I'm learning things from. Those get a little more detailed than just my feelings on a fiction book that I'm reading. This one was a little longer than my last one, so it would not fit on some of the platforms that the book released through. So when I tried to post the full review on Story Origins, it was too big. So I have a shorter version of the review, and you'll see if you check the different locations that the book reviews can be put up at. You may see two from me, but it is basically the same, but it is a shortened version because I have to always make a short version of my detailed book reviews because it can't fit in some platforms. They have like character limits or word limits and things like that. And this is the printed out version of the book review. It's 3 pages roughly. So you got like this one, and then this page, and then this last page. So it is detailed. I tend to just mostly, I don't try to do spoilers, so it's a little harder to do spoilers for a book you're learning something from, because people are looking for that so they can know if they want to get it or not. So I'd still try to keep it where I'm not giving everything away, but enough to, let people know what I really felt about it. And I tend to break down like by chapter when I'm doing nonfiction books, if the book is done in chapter basis, and Dale's tend to be. So it was easy to break it down to what I felt for each different chapter and what I felt that I got out of each chapter of the book. But needless to say that I did give this one 5 stars as well. As I said, when I give something 5 stars, it is because I feel that it delivered on what it promised, and it did help me in different ways. That being said, I loved the book. Even though I didn't necessarily have current plans to write a nonfiction book in 24 hours, I found the information extremely helpful, even in other areas of writing. Okay, so that being said, I went through the book, read it, took notes, obviously, uh, and it actually inspired me to want to write some of the nonfiction based books that I've been thinking about in the past, and maybe executing those even in 24 hours. If you want to read my detailed review on Amazon, I also did leave a review on Kobo and Goodreads, and of course now you have the YouTube video. But I think, is there anywhere else I left the review? But the long review is on Amazon if you want to check it out, because I'm probably not going to go over every single detail here, but just to give you my feelings. Let's jump into chapter 1. In chapter 1, Dale talks about the writing process of doing a nonfiction book. And this was different for me a little bit because I am mostly a fiction writer and don't necessarily do nonfiction as like my thing. I have some, again, ideas of some nonfiction books that I wanted to write in the future, but again, they were on the back burner. But this gives me some insight into the differences between a nonfiction process and the fiction process. Granted, they are similar, but there are some distinctive differences, especially in what Dale touches on in chapter 1. And Dale likes to do real life experiences mixed in with when he's writing his books and teaching you how to do something. It really helps. It brings it to a humanistic level of understanding when you give your own experiences of things, which I really love that about his work. He starts off with asking you a question about what you want to write about, and you want to kind of lean into that as far as where you're going with your nonfiction book. Think about what you're passionate about. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. It does. Then he asks about who are your readers going to be. You got to think about that, really. I mean, to me, that also comes into play when you are a fiction writer as well. Like, who are you writing this to? Like, who is this for? It is definitely something to for sure think about either way. He talks about research and the importance of research based around whatever the nonfiction subject you're talking about. And he does stress that he doesn't do the heavy research during the draft, but he does that and saves the heavy researching for the edits. Also mentions the copyright things that could occur. If you're researching and or you're going to quote someone directly, then you need to think about the copyrights around their wording. It's better to use your perspective on what they said than to directly use their words in that way, because there could be a possibility of copyright things that could occur, which is good that he brought that up, because some people might not think about that nor think about they're doing something wrong. So it is good to have a refresher and a reminder to ease up on that, and it's best to interpret and use your own words. Outlining. So the outlining for nonfiction, which outlining is my jam. I outline for all my fiction books now, hence why I started finishing things. From Dale's information, the outlining structure is a little bit different than the regular fiction writing structure to me. So I found that like very useful information. Definitely want to keep notes on that, especially if I'm going to write nonfiction books as well. And since I'm an outliner, this was very important for me. So I'm grateful that his book covered that. And now I feel like, yeah, okay, I'm ready. I got some more information, something I did not know. Now, chapter 2. Dale talked about the typing tools that you could use for writing your book in 24 hours. Because obviously, this is an endeavor, because you are doing something in a faster paced setting in a way, and technically you won't even have a full 24 hours to write this book, because you have things like you have to sleep and you do have to eat. But Dale does give a little bit of insight into a way to help with some of those things. Not the sleep part, because you're going to have to sleep, obviously. Duh, you're alive. Of course, Dale does mention try not to stress about, editing, heavy editing, or formatting. That's not something you need to worry about doing the first draft. Everyone knows their first draft is going to be possibly a dumpster fire, but you don't have anything written, you can't fix anything. So you don't want to worry about editing, and definitely not formatting, because that's not the time for this. Then chapter 3. This chapter was big on voice dictation. Not something I personally thought about doing to write my book. Voice dictation is not something I've used to write a book before, so actually getting to hear someone talk about it in a more detailed manner of usage and what to use was very helpful. I could even possibly use voice dictation for my fiction. Dale goes into details of what free aspects and free avenues you could use to do dictation for your book. Also, he did mention Dragon Naturally Speaking, which is a paid version, but there are different avenues. I just use my Microsoft Word doc. It has a dictation on there. This can be very sensitive. Like if you whisper, it can pick it up. So you do have to set up, which Dale does talk about your setup of, like, you don't have to have a studio or like a closet or something that you set up for, like when you're doing voice recording or something like that. But you do want to at least have it quiet in the room that you're going to be dictating in, and no one else in there talking, because it will pick it up. So he goes over basic things you definitely need to know in order to be able to pull off some dictation for your book. Chapter 4. This chapter is all about transcribing, which is another thing I didn't think about doing to finish a book in 24 hours. It offered a new and refreshing perspective on a way to finish your book, your nonfiction book, and adding to the level and speed to help you finish a book in a 24-hour endeavor. Dale discusses different approaches, including cost, equipment that you would need to do transcribing. If you do decide to go this route, he does give you a well of information in order to pull that off. Chapter 5 talks about time management, which obviously you really have to try to learn to do that if you're going to be writing a book in 24 hours. This is a chapter where he talked about meal prep the day before, and make sure you get enough sleep. Try not to eat a lot of bad stuff because it's easy to grab. Very good things to bring up. He offers advice on staying focused and avoiding distractions, which we all are guilty of. Dale discusses something called SMART, SMART, a philosophy. That means, if you break down the acronym, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. This was very insightful. And I don't know if I've heard the saying before, but he does break down each one and gives you a detail of which each one means. So make sure you check out that chapter because that is important. And I would take notes on that. Chapter 6. We can all use motivation and confidence, and that's what this chapter covers. I'm glad Dale didn't forget about that. He wouldn't, though. This chapter, he touches on writer's block, which, that's a well-known thing in the writing world. I personally don't feel that I've ever experienced writer's block. I like to call it life got in the way block. He offers ideas to help overcome it. So this chapter, I'm sure, can help a lot of writers, whether you're writing a nonfiction book or not. His suggestions are pretty good and full of wisdom. I did appreciate this chapter with Dale brought up writer's block and things that can get in the way of that. And if you're trying to do a 24-hour finish a book kind of situation, you definitely need to be on your P's and Q's. And before this chapter ended, Dale did touch on having a good support system to help with the success of this type of projects. And I agree 100. Even just standardly writing a book and not trying to finish it in 24 hours, having a good support system and understanding around you will really help you be able to finish projects that you're on. Because sometimes those distractions that we all want to have in life, especially if we have a family, and if you have those around you that's understanding, it does make it a little easier on you. He brought up things like you can get yourself involved in writing workshops and going to conferences and things like that. And of course, we have social media and we can connect with lots of different people. So it's sometimes good to maybe get into a writing group or a writing buddy, something like that. I think that that's sometimes helpful. I've actually finished projects because I had a writing buddy, like one of my best friends, Aphrodite Lee, who's also an author. We sometimes have writing sessions together, so he's on point in this. Chapter 7. This one touches on about polishing your manuscript. After you finish your manuscript, they'll suggest you take a step back a day or so and relax a little before you jump into the next stages, which is editing. Dale goes over his process of editing his 3-step system using Microsoft Editor, Pro Writing Aid, and then text to speech. This system to me is one of the best ways because I do a light edit in Microsoft Editor, then use Pro Writer Aid for a little heavier self-editing process, and then text to speech to have the computer read it to me, and I can listen for errors because sometimes even after all that, you can still something that may not sound right. Dale tells you his steps here, which is a good way to go. If you feel this resonates with you, I would definitely pay attention to this chapter. He really didn't overlook any crucial steps that are essential in my opinion. He also mentions beta readers and ARC team. Now chapter 8. This chapter discusses publishing options, which is very helpful to go to the next stage. Like I said, Dale doesn't miss a step in this book. He talked a little bit about the big 5, if you're going traditional, agents, and then self-publishing, which that's what we're all here for. He discussed the efforts that are involved and how to approach them. In a few short pages, he talks about the description of your book and the importance of it and how you could possibly come up with one, which then leads us into the next and final chapter, chapter 9. So this chapter was the dreaded M word followed by the P word. And you should know what those are, being a writer or author. You know what I'm going to say. Marketing and promoting. We all have to do it. If we don't, then our books just sit there and nothing occurs. He explains that these tasks are continuous if you want your book to do well, which is very true. We all know the dreaded if you stop marketing your book, it will flatline. Dale provides excellent starting points, like using social media and establishing a brand, as well as tips on collaborations and publicity. Even though this book is focused towards writing a nonfiction book in 24 hours, a lot of these aspects can be used in conjunction with writing a fiction book. The book concludes with Dale's final thoughts and inspiration, which I really love that. And then also Dale has resources and links at the back of the book, which is great and helpful for the aspect of the things that he talked about. Like I said, Dale doesn't forget anything. Grab yourself a copy. It's already out. Came out on the 15th. So you can get it at all the major retailers out there. I have Dale's link below for where you can get the book. Make sure you grab a book copy if you're interested in writing a nonfiction book in 24 hours. So definitely check this book out and share it with those who would be interested in this concept. And I'll see you in the next book review. Stay scared.